One giant way that people try to mislead statistics is by making changes in the graphs that they use. So I'm going to show you an example where people can either try to accentuate an increase or decentuate an increase. So let's look. Don't worry about the fact that the data is outdated. We're not going to look at that fact. We're just going to look at how the graph changes your perception of the data. So this graph shows the average movie ticket price in the US from the year 2000 to 2008, and it's showing almost a steady increase from about $5.40 up until almost $7, but not quite $7. So if you want to accentuate an increase, the biggest thing that you can do is this change. So I want you to think what changed. This is the original graph, and this is the accentuated graph. So what they've done is, instead of the scale starting at 0, they have changed it so that the scale starts at 5, and instead of going up to $8, it only goes up to 7, which means it makes it look like the increase is greater than it was before. There's nothing saying that a graph has to start at 0. So in your notes, you have a sheet called Let's Get Visual, and we're going to be looking at all of the different ways that graphs can change your perception. So this is the original graph of the average movie ticket price. And this is the second graph we looked at, so where they changed the scales. So what you're going to write is that this graph is biased. The increase has been accentuated by not starting the scale on the y-axis at 0. This happens a lot. And remember, graphs do not have to start at 0. But if they don't start at 0, you are possibly misleading your viewers. Now, if you go back to this graph, we're going to change it so that it might make the increase look even more noticeable. And what we've done here is we have changed the line color to red, and we have made it bolder. So this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Making your graphs colorful with bright colors like red and bolding it draws your attention to the increase. So in your notes, the next section will show here, you can write, this graph is biased. The increase has been accentuated using a thick, bold line. And not only that, but you're using bright colors. So you can write that down. And then we're going to go back to our graph. All right, so we're going to start back at the original graph. This is the original unbiased graph. And the next thing we're going to do is this. Now, we talked already about changing the y-scale to not start at 0, but the x-scale can also be compressed. So if the x-scale is compressed, it makes the increase show even more of an increase than it was before. So not only are we changing the y-scale, but we're also compressing the x-scale. So this was the unbiased graph, and there is the biased graph. So in your notes, you can say here that this graph is biased. The increase has been accentuated by compressing the x-axis. If you need more time to copy these, just pause them. We're now going to look at some ways that you can decentuate an increase. Sometimes people want to hide an increase rather than show it off. So here is your original unbiased graph. So one thing that people do is they change the font so that you can't really read it. So you don't know what the years are. You can't really read the scale on the y-axis. So it just draws your attention more to the line that it's not really increasing that much and you can't really see the numbers. In your notes, you can write over here for this graph that the graph is biased and the increase has been decentuated by hiding the scale numbers. And the last one is, you can see here that what they've done is they have taken out the grid lines, and by taking out the grid lines, it doesn't give quite as big a perspective of how big the numbers have changed, because you can't see, is this above 7 or is this below 7? You can't see exactly where the numbers are. So in your notes, you've got this graph is biased and the increase has been decentuated by hiding the grid lines. So those are some different ways to show how graphs have been manipulated. You can see another example of this using this data here. Unemployment level by random quarter. You can see that the graph was not started at 0, it was started at 6 and it went up to 16. So it looks like the graph has increased more than it would have if the graph had started at 6.